very unique diplomatic journey. Well, before we get started to the last week of the Academy, I would like to welcome and express my sincere appreciation to our esteemed guest, His Excellency Dr. Husam Zamlot, the head of Palestinian mission to the UK, and His Excellency Mr. Taha Ayhan, the president of Islamic Cooperation Youth Forum, who generously spared their time for us tonight in the last week of the Academy. Well, today marks the closing ceremony and the last week of our fourth Diplomacy Academy program, and we are very proud to be able to host it for 6 weeks with all of you with a wonderful energy and enthusiasm. And I would like to pay my deep respect to all of the participants for your positive participation in the Academy. Well, now I would like to give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Taha Ayhan to deliver his closing remarks. His Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Fatma. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Merhaba to everyone, to all my sisters and brothers. And assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi to His Excellency Husam Zamlot Bey, the Ambassador of Palestine to the United Kingdom. And first of all, Eid Mubarak to all. On this year occasion, I wish to extend my regards and warmest welcome to all with us today. And also would like to express my appreciation for the outstanding efforts of the young diplomats of the OIC and beyond. Once again, I would like to congratulate the ICYF team for the good work for bringing together this event. And without you, the participants, without the young people with us, this event cannot be organized and cannot be realized. As ICYF, we have been organizing the Diplomacy Academy program since 2019 with the objectives of contributing the education and development of Muslim youth in theoretical and practical terms about current international relations and issues, and equipping them with the diplomatic skills in the multicultural platform. As today, we have implemented the 3 Diplomacy Academy programs successfully. The first one, in 2019, we kicked off in becomes a tradition and a flagship program for ICYF, which aims to enlighten the future diplomats of youth of OIC and beyond. And the first one was the physical one. But unfortunately, then there happened very unprecedented events with the COVID-19 pandemic, and then we have transformed the Diplomacy Academy into online form. And we hopefully want to see Diplomacy Academy and all of you, sisters and brothers, in person, physically again in ICYF headquarters once this pandemic is over. But until that time, we will continue to organize Diplomacy Academy online. And alhamdulillah, today, this tradition, the 4th Diplomacy Academy, is finalizing with 1,000 participants, and I am pleased to see high interest to the Islamic Cooperation Forum programs. Inshallah, day by day, we are going to reach more and more youth across the globe. I am sure all of us here, we see that there is a clear need for concerted action and solidarity in the field of youth. This can only be achieved by means of informed policy, capacity building made towards the present and future needs of our youth, high impact strategy and sustainable initiatives. The OIC is fortunately home to the best positioned framework for realizing sustainable youth development throughout each of our member states. ICYF position is youth must not be seen as a challenge to be managed, but instead a vital human capital in need of care and investment. Only by developing their knowledge, skills, and competencies can youth become active, meaningful, and participants in the development agenda. Youth have a significant effect on all aspects of socioeconomic growth and development, with a direct bearing on unemployment rate, violence, political participation, innovation, research, industrialization, job creation, and entrepreneurship, which are all keys to nation's growth and success, and also which are the all key problematic areas which the youth suffers from in the OIC region. Effective youth empowerment would realize and actualize youth potential while reinforcing central values and core ideals underpinning the socio-economic growth. As you may know, as Islamic Cooperation Forum, ICYF, we give big importance to diplomacy and try to impose it to our target group, starting from very young ages. We always try to build bridges of peace to the young people by bringing them together. And then I think that we made a good job since we started our activities regarding the youth diploma. In this regard, I would like to underline the importance of raising good diplomats in the point of Islam and being good Muslims. And I want to also express all the participants of this Diplomacy Academy program, starting from His Excellency Husam Bey, because With their participation, Diplomacy Academy has become better and better day by day. Diplomacy is also a reflection of the values of nations and people, their cultural and civilizational specificities, political choices, and their religious precepts and traditions. Is a portrait of the past, a reflection of the present, and a vision of the future. And any form of diplomacy is built around the principles of governing the political structure of the state it represents, whose interests it serves, and whose entity it embodies abroad. Diplomacy can be defined as the art and science of conducting international relations. Diplomacy, according to Islamic Sharia, is one of the best ways to show the Islamic values, merits, and advantages in conducting international affairs with non-Muslims. Before I conclude my words, I would like to thank His Excellency Ambassador Husam Zamlot Bey for his contribution to the Fourth Diplomacy Academy. Your Excellency's indispensable political and diplomatic experience and contribution is a testimony of your determination to help find solutions on matters affecting the youth within the OIC region. As Islamic Cooperation Youth Forum, ICYF, we always work to support youth and facilitate their more active participation in these decision-making processes. I believe that the diplomats and the leaders of the future will be trained better thanks to this and similar programs. Even though this is the last session of Fourth Diplomacy Academy, as you know, this will be open a new gate for the Fifth Diplomacy Academy and our ongoing programs. Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you very much for your patience, and thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much, and see you in next programs. Masalam.
Thank you, His Excellency, for your kind words and overall support to the Diplomacy Academy. Well, now let me give the floor to our guest speaker today, His Excellency Dr. Husam Zamlot, the head of Palestinian mission to the UK, to deliver his speech with the agenda of Palestine issue on every aspect. But before that, His Excellency, please allow me to read your biography for our guests. Ambassador Dr. Husam Zamlot is the head of Palestinian mission to the United Kingdom. Prior to his appointment to the UK, Dr. Zamlot served as ambassador to the United States and strategic affairs advisor to the Palestinian president. Dr. Zamlot's previous official roles include serving as ambassador at large for the Palestinian presidency and director of Fatah Foreign Relations Commission. Dr. Zamlot holds a PhD in economics from the University of London, was a professor of strategy and public policy at Birzeit University, where he co-founded and chaired Birzeit's School of Government, and held a number of teaching and research positions at Harvard University and University of London. His professional experiences include working as an economist at the United Nations and economic researcher with London Schools of Economics at the Palestine Policy Research Institute. Dr. Zamlot is married and has 3 children. Now, His Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Fatima, for this very generous introduction and for chairing this session. And it is truly a pleasure for me to speak to you today. I am honored to have been invited and want to thank you and the organizers for this wonderful opportunity to address some of the issues that confront us as Palestinians and by extension in the region, the Islamic world, and the wider global context. But please allow me, Fatima, here to thank the OEC Youth Forum, the Islamic Cooperation Youth Forum, and its president, His Excellency Taha Ahyan, whose efforts and your efforts in molding the leaders of the future of the Islamic world is vital. It's a vital, crucial work that you do, efforts that you do. It is the moving forward. It is the breeding of our next generation of leaders. So to my fellow young leaders, fellow diplomats, brothers and sisters, I am particularly excited to be addressing this forum, youth forum, for one simple reason. In recent months and years, we have seen Palestinian youth, your friends, your brothers and sisters back in Palestine and abroad, come to the forefront in the struggle for our just and legitimate rights. I think we look at the Sheikh Jarrah resistance, if you have followed in May and April, where siblings like Muna and Muhammad al-Kurd have had such an impact, but not just that. Our new generation, our young generation, our youth are really inspiring everybody inside and outside, and they are keeping the momentum, the struggle all over the occupied territories, in the West Bank, in Gaza, in Jerusalem, all over, and even in our communities in exile outside, our refugees. And we will see that our youth are at the front of our rejection. You definitely have followed that now our youth, like you and like all the youth of the world, are in the forefront of the rejection of the injustice and the wrongs of the Israel's occupation and the criminal disposition of the Palestinian people, our property, our land, the ongoing Nakba, the ongoing disaster since 1948. So that's what I am so delighted to speak to you, the young leaders of the Islamic world who will represent us in the future. So this is why this opportunity is very unique. That our youth have taken on the mantle of struggle means many things to many people. To our Israeli oppressors and to all those who support them, it means simply this: the Palestinian people are not going to give up struggling for their legitimate rights, no matter what you do. You know, there was a saying in the old days when Israel was established that the old will die and the young will forget. That is definitely not the case. As long as this torch burns, as long as it is fueled with injustice, it will be passed from father to son and mother to daughter. We have proven this over nearly 8 decades. We are proving this again now, and we will continue to do so from a generation to another. To the Palestinian people generally and our supporters in the region and beyond, it also means this: we will not surrender, and we will not accept anything other than the complete fulfillment of our legitimate rights. Our rights to statehood, sovereignty, and independence, free or from occupation, our right to return to our homeland. Why do I tell you this, my friends? We are, all of us, at a critical juncture. And to see our youth and you take on the mantle of struggle is especially important at this very moment. A two-state solution, my friend, a strategic solution that the Palestinian leadership chose decades ago, continues to pursue, is very much in the balance today. This whole two-state solution that we have adopted long ago is on the balance today. This is not idle warning. It's not just a warning. This is an indisputable fact, my friend. It is absolutely indisputable. The two-state solution is in danger because Israel has never really been serious about it. That is another indisputable fact. If Israel had been serious about two states, it would have shown itself to be serious about halting and reversing the spread of settlements. It has never been serious about halting the spread of settlement, let alone reversing it. This is also an indisputable fact. Now, of course, this was clear from the beginning. It was clear to us, and it was clear to everyone who paid attention. The Israeli settlement project is long planned, very long planned. Some would even argue it was planned even before Israel occupied the rest of historic Palestine in 1967. It remains supported by Israelis from across the political spectrum. I mean, the settlement enterprise, the colonies inside the occupied territories. Uprooting it in the cause of peace, however, necessary, was never going to be easy. So every day they create facts on the ground, and every day they tell us it's going to be difficult, not easy, impossible. The calculation made by us, the Palestinian people and leadership, was that a firm commitment from our side to a two-state solution based on international resolutions and international law would cause the international community to actually not only back this outcome, but to eventually enforce Israeli compliance. That was the whole idea, that once we adopt the two-state solution as leadership and as people, we would ally ourselves with international resolutions and international law, and that would bring the full force of the international community which remains to be the main backer of the two-state solution, to not just affirm the commitment to a global rules-based order, but to eventually enforce, implement that order, that system, that law, all these resolutions that have been adopted over the years. This, alas, the enforcement has not happened. Hasn't happened, my friends. It was further hoped that in parallel to international pressure, again, I'm talking about our adaptation of the international order's decision for a two-state solution, it was also hoped that in parallel to international pressure, the promise of normalized relations with the rest of the Arab and Muslim world upon the successful completion of the two-state project would provide further incentive for Israel to abandon its territorial expansionist designs and pursue a just peace instead. This too has not happened. Neither the international pressure and implementation, nor that has happened in spite of the Saudi-sponsored Arab Peace Initiative that also was adopted by the Organization of the Islamic Cooperation, by the way, that offered exactly that normalization after a peace has arrived, after a final agreement. And you know, that offer has been made as far back as 2002, already almost 20 years ago, 19 years to be precise. So indeed, the recent normalization agreement struck between Israel and some Arab states has instead seen this carrot we're talking about, this incentive, partly eaten, if you like, partly taken away. So the Arab and Muslim Peace Initiative has been somewhat undermined as a result. So my friends, this is where we are. It's been too long now, and we are at an impasse. We see settlements continue to expand. We see our people continue to suffer gravely, killed and arrested arbitrarily, without recourse to law, their homes, our homes and villages destroyed, the economy and livelihoods undermined, our natural resources are stolen. You know, even the hope for a viable solution, a sovereign state, is disappearing, dissipating with every brick that is built in these illegal settlements and all these walls deep in the occupied West Bank and deep in the occupied East Jerusalem. And of course, as you all know, Gaza remains under blockade, complete blockade for the last 15 years. This situation is simply unsustainable. We are reaching, as recent events in Palestine have shown, only 2 months ago, in May, a point of no return. A point whereby something will have to give, my friends. Something will have to give. The international community must finally pull itself together and stand up for its own rules. If not for justice for the Palestinian people, and if not for peace, at least for the international rules. In the meantime, I promise you, we will continue our struggle. The Palestinian people will not go anywhere. We are not going anywhere. This is a given. This is a given. This is a fact. It is attested to by the actions of our courageous people, our courageous youth. It is attested to by nearly a century of steadfast struggle, resistance, resilience, remaining. Thus, if we are going to take a real political perspective on this conflict, as we are so often urged to do by our international interlocutors, we have to keep these two facts in mind, my friends. Israel may have the military and the money, but we have the legitimacy and the will. And we have more. We have you. We have the growing solidarity from around the globe, around the world. Now I have outlined to you the problems and obstacles and intransigent Israeli government and reluctant and timid international community. And this is exactly it. I happen to be an ambassador representing my country, my people, my cause in the US and now in the UK. There is an issue with the intransigence of the successive Israeli governments and the reluctance and the timid approach by the international community. However, it is not all bleak, my friends. In fact, in some ways, the situation is improving for us, the people of Palestine, and for the Palestinian cause. You must have witnessed, you must have seen the demonstrations, the explosion of popular anger at the Israeli policies, and the solidarity with the Palestinian people that happened all over the world during the May's Israeli or the Israeli assault in May on the occupied East Jerusalem, starting in Sheikh Jarrah, Al-Aqsa Mosque, and the rest of the occupied Palestine, of course. And you must have also witnessed the unity of the Palestinian people across our historic homeland, that very inspiring sense of unity and togetherness. From Haifa to Rafah, from Jericho to Jerusalem, there was that sense of unity of purpose, unity of suffering, unity of goal, unity of destination. And you must have also witnessed the growing support around the world for countries to hold Israel actually and finally accountable for Israel's actions, including in the US. Legislators like Bernie Sanders, Senator Sanders, and many others tried to bring in legislation to make US military aid conditional on Israel's behavior. This may have failed, but it is a first important step. It is in fact unprecedented in Washington, and I know a little bit about the Washington scene. To introduce these laws and these resolutions is definitely historic. And in the UK, here where I sit, a popular petition forced the British Parliament to debate not just arms control and arms embargo, but sanctions generally against Israel. And where governments falter, and the governments do falter, private companies now take the lead, I must say. We see pension funds divest their money from Israeli companies shown to be complicit in the occupation. We see universities forced to defend their collaborations with Israeli colleges with branches in settlements, and in some cases in such cooperation should these universities have branches in the illegal settlements. And we see global brands, sports stars, and celebrities, from Ben and Jerry's ice cream recently to Paul Pogba, the famous football player, the English, take a stand, show solidarity with Palestinians, and put their money where their principles are, and stop selling in these illegal settlements. This, my friends, my fellow diplomats, young leaders of the Muslim world, is the way forward. This is the way forward. This is how we overcome the reluctance by governments around the world to stick their necks out for justice and for law. This is how we put some serious but peaceful and non-violent pressure on the illegalities perpetuated by Israel. And this is where we can all make a difference, because there is still hope. There is a lot of hope. I just returned from Palestine, and I returned with abundance of hope, thanks to the people, our people, that I met in Jerusalem, that I met in Ramallah, in Hebron, in Nablus, in Gaza, in Haifa, in Yafa, in Akka, everywhere. Our people are very hopeful. There is still hope for a resolution to our conflict based on the international resolutions. There is still hope for a global rules-based system that is being undermined at every turn by countries who claim they believe in it, but who do not enforce those rules on Israel. We still have hope for that global rules-based order. We actually believe that one of the strongest arguments in favor of a just solution to the Palestinian struggle based on two-state solution is that it would at long last see the implementation of a global order that was all but abandoned under Donald Trump, and which is absolutely crucial to maintaining global peace and security around all the world. This isn't just about Palestine. This is about the kind of world we want to live in and the kind of world we want to inherit to our children and grandchildren. So for a system of law to be effective, it has to be seen to be just. Law cannot be subdivided. If law is to be applied, it must be applied right across the board. And to be just, for it to be just, it has to be seen to be implemented and enforced on all equally. There is no just system of law that arbitrarily applies to some but not to others. And you know, my friends, the international community has allowed Israel to be above the law for a long time, to enjoy a culture of impunity, that, you know, Israel is the exception. We put Israel aside. This has to end. It is why we protest when the powerful and rich seem to be able to break laws at will without consequences, without real consequences. It is why we abhor the system of apartheid in South Africa. And it is why right-thinking people like you everywhere despises the system of apartheid Israel has imposed on the Palestinian people. It is why, for the law-abiding global community, ensuring Israel's compliance with international law is so important, not only for Palestine, but for the rest of humanity. And I'm sure you have followed some of the damning international human rights reports that came out recently, describing the Israeli system as a full-fledged apartheid, as Israel has crossed that red line of apartheid, that threshold. There can be no exception and no exceptionalism. This exceptionalism must end. Every country, every nation, every state must be under the law, not above the law. Otherwise, the international global system will imminently collapse, my friends. So for far too long, our struggle has somehow been portrayed as a conflict between two equal sides. And I want to really focus on this, because you are the leaders of the future. And part of this is the misinformation, is the misrepresentation. So wherever you go in mainstream media, especially Western media, in the US, in Europe, in the UK, it is always portrayed as a conflict between almost two equal sides. For this, media must take a big share of the blame. It has irresponsibly, I must say, engaged in what you might call two-sidism. But this paints an inaccurate and false picture of the situation. People demonstrating for the right to stay and to remain in their own homes and being beaten and tear-gassed by uniformed and armed security forces is often described by international media as clashes. Clashes? When Israeli soldiers violate the sanctity of Al-Aqsa Mosque, the mosque, storming this holy place, our mosque, and spraying tear gas even into the clinic of the mosque, it is reported as unrest. What unrest? We must beware of this false narrative and false equivalences, like war. What war? War between Israel and Gaza, as if we have two equal armies. I mean, these terminologies have been a major part of the cover-up and the misinformation of the situation. We must confront that. Do not be fooled. Nobody of us should be fooled. If there is a conflict here, it is between the oppressor and the oppressed. There is no two sides. There is only one side. That is the oppressor, the occupier, the colonizer, the besieger, and that is Israel. If there is a conflict here, it is between the heavily subsidized, cutting-edge technology of a nuclear-armed Israeli military and the largely unarmed Palestinian people and our fearsome determination. That's all. That's it. That's all what we have. We have fearsome determination. That is the conflict, not two-sidism. Don't believe anyone who attempts to say that the Israelis and Palestinians are equally culpable or equally to blame. We're not. We are not. There is no equality in the blame here. There is a victim and a victimizer. And the Palestinian people have been dislodged. We have been dislodged and dispossessed over 8 years. Ours is a battle for our survival on our own ancestral land, my friend. So Israel from day one was designed to rid the land of its native population. From day one. And I come from a refugee camp family. I was born in a refugee camp to the very south of Gaza, in Rafah. I know what happened to my family, to my father, who was born in where Israel became. I know exactly the stories of how this whole campaign was designed to rid the land of our people, of the Palestinian population. In this essence, and in this sense as well, Israel is a classic colonial project. It is a project of settlement, exploitation, and displacement, continued, and it's non-stop. It cannot stop. It's limitless. But also, in this sense, it has failed, and it will continue to fail, my friends. We will not be displaced from our land. That's not an easy task, I assure you. We will not be denied our rights, and we will not be silenced or pushed aside. You know, the Palestinian people are very well-rooted, cultured, right at the crossroad of civilizations. So I must take pride in our nation and in the resilience of our nation. And so when you read or watch media attempting to portray the Palestinian struggle as one between two sides equally at fault for prolonging the conflict, challenge them. Challenge them, please. No, this is not the case. Challenge them, write to them, tell them you are being part of the agony of the Palestinian people. It isn't the case. And my friends, as the future leaders of the Muslim world, and I'm so delighted I'm having this opportunity, you may ask yourself, what can you do? How can, as young Muslim youth leaders, make a difference? And I have these few suggestions for you, four actually. The first is, what made the big difference in the last few weeks and months in the international arena, in the international solidarity, was social media, I must say, because traditional media has been blocking the truth for all this long. Now social media, some of it is trying to block, and I had met representatives from some of these platforms to warn them about attempts to block the Palestinian content, the Palestinian voices. But social media is, it's a platform that could be used, and I urge you, as our brothers and sisters, to use it at full and to challenge and to disseminate information and to share. People could see for themselves now the power of the mobile phone, the power of the video, the power of the world, of the word, the power of your voice is limitless. We live in a wired world, my friend. It is very wired now, very connected. A world in which your voices can reach across the globe in a way they never could be before. And I'm sure many of you around this discussion today, this conference, are very influencing in the social media, and I'm sure you reach thousands of people all over the world. Use it, please. Advocate, spread the word, educate other people about Palestine, engage the other people from all over backgrounds, please, from all religions. Engage them, because if you do, you will find that you can convince them easily, because you're talking about a very just cause. That alone is convincing, but also you're talking about the law, international law and international legitimacy and respect for our universal values. Number two, Israel's biggest diplomatic endeavor as we speak is to not to engage the West or to affect the West. They are focused now on the East, on the rest of the world, in Asia, in Africa, in the Muslim world particularly, where the country has just secured a seat at the table of the African Union. This is something to be worried about, and I'm not going to tell you to shun Israel because it is Israel, but I will tell you to resist this Israeli push because it does not serve the cause of peace. If Israel, as presently constituted in full pursuit of its settlement project and opposed to a proper two-state outcome, if Israel finds its presence normalized, that it has a normal presence in the region, while still occupying the Palestinian land and people, while still colonizing, while still stealing properties and demolishing homes, while still besieging Gaza, then why would they roll that project back in the future? In any scenario, if they can have the cake and eat it too. So we need to make sure that this incentive of normalization remains to be an incentive rather than actually something that is undermined and taken away. This was also our main objection to normalization before a final resolution to the conflict. This brings me to the third point, which is one of the weaknesses in the past attempts at peace negotiations is that the efforts have been bilateral rather than multilateral, leaving Israel, the wolf, and the stronger party, a free hand with the lamb and a free hand to pursue unilateral measures like the settlements, at will, by the way. So we need you, and this is my key message, we need to clinch into internationalism, international law, multilateralism. This whole unilateralism and bilateralism has been a failed model and should be ditched going forward. We, the Palestinian people and leadership, want to ditch that model. And as I alluded to you before, we are going to pursue a just peace. It is only partly for the sake of the Palestinian people. It is it is also for the sake of ensuring the implementation of the global rules-based order. So to that effect, it is only reasonable then that we adopt a truly multilateral approach to peacemaking. We need the world We need you. We need the OIC. We need the rest of the world to be on the table. We cannot afford to just go about it bilaterally. This is a time when we need multilateralism, and this is going to be very paramount to our endeavor. Lastly, and perhaps on a more personal level, my friends, please connect with the Palestinian youth. You will find them very inspiring, like you are, full of energy, full of ideas, fascinating. I was in the last trip, and every time I visit back home, fascinated by the new generation. So please connect, reach out and speak to them, connect with them in their universities, in their workplace, in the play places, and to live the reality. Direct contact can bring you a much better sense of what is happening on the ground than any media coverage ever will. And if that includes physically visiting Palestine, please do come and visit us, visit the occupied Jerusalem, visit the occupied Palestine, and come and visit us. You're not visiting the prison guards, you are visiting the prisoners. And I tell you, the prisoners are in need of your visit, of your interaction, of your support, of praying at Al-Aqsa Mosque, of seeing the beauty of our land and of our people. So I want to conclude here and to leave much time to the discussion by just saying that I really, really thank you, and I am so hopeful because of your generation, be it in Palestine, be it in the Muslim world, and be it worldwide. I see a new generation that is relentless, that is principled, that is very eloquent, a generation that is determined, and I believe that this generation might actually deliver what we all want, which is a peaceful world, a world that respects each other based on our rights. So thank you very much, my friends.
Well, thank you, Dr. Zamlot, for this truly inspiring speech. Well, there's a famous saying, what I hear, I forget, and what I see, I remember, but what I do, I understand. So I hope all of us can take real action for the Palestinian people. And His Excellency, if you allow me, I would like to open the floor for questions from our participants. Actually, we received many, but I will ask a few of them to you. And the first question is from Amin Abu Bakar from Ethiopia. Lately, Israel imposing heavy blockade to the Palestinian territories. How does people of Palestine dealing with the social inequalities, injustices that stemming from such blockade? For example, he says lack of educational opportunities, income gap, etc.
Thank you, Amin, for this question. And yes, the blockade is a very illegal method of collective punishment that Israel has been deploying ever since it was established. Besiegement and blockades of Palestinian cities, the Jaffa siege as early as 1947 and 48, all the way to the Gaza siege and the Gaza blockade. It's a war crime. In every sense, it's a war crime. And the effect of the siege is immense. I just returned from Palestine, and part of my visit to Palestine was Gaza, the besieged, blockaded Gaza. And you cannot imagine, I mean, the people even ration, they cannot store meat because they don't have electricity to turn on the refrigerators. Hospitals will have issues with their, running. Life is not normal. And this is one simple fact, which is electricity, let alone that Gaza has no water that is suitable to human consumption, let alone the fact that people are unable to move freely in and out of Gaza, etc., etc. So nothing would be more undermining of the human spirit and the human potential than the siege and the blockade. That's why our main demand is to lift the blockade rather than just give us crumbs and humanitarian assistance. We have in Gaza, in Jerusalem, in the rest of the occupied Palestinian territory, we have the most talented youth. We have almost zero illiteracy rate. I mean, we have one of the highest per capita graduates in terms of PhDs, the most PhD graduates in the world. And, we have such a human capital. We have a very good geostrategic location. I mean, Gaza is literally at the gate between Asia, Europe, and Africa. So we have all what it takes. All what we need is the Israeli authorities and the Israeli state get off our back, end this blockade, end the occupation, and allow this potential to flourish.
Thank you, His Excellency. Now, the second question is from Navari Harbin from Indonesia. On 1990s, there were substantial talks regarding a peaceful solution. Under today's circumstances, does parties open to peace talks to settle the ongoing conflict?
Thank you, Navalis. And you're right. In the 90s, we had hopes of a solution. There was a lot of talk about a final solution, a final agreement. And, we signed the Oslo Accords as the Palestinian leadership. The Oslo Accords were primarily an interim agreement that was supposed to serve only for 5 years. At the end of this interim period between 1993 to 1999, by May 1999, we were supposed to turn into a full-fledged sovereign state. That was the Oslo Accords. The Oslo Accords was just an interim arrangement to get to the final agreement. And in the process, we recognized the state of Israel on the 1967 borders as Palestine. Now, unfortunately, our hopes, intentions were met by the opposite from Israel. Number one, Israel never recognized us. There was no reciprocity here. Number two, it has used the Oslo Accords to increase their settlement expansion, doubling it. So we started the Oslo process with 125,000 illegal settlers. Today, we're talking about more than 700,000. So unfortunately, you're right. The mood and the mindset of the 90s is no longer with us. And in the meantime, the Israeli public is unfortunately has been shifting from the right and more right every day, to an extent that the settlement movement has become long ago during Netanyahu part of the Israeli government, part of the Israeli system. And now the Israeli settlement is fully built in the Israeli political system, the Israeli narrative, so nobody is even questioning these illegal settlements. So unfortunately, we are not in where we were in the 90s when there was some serious discussion about ending this illegality and then the occupation. That's why in my introductory remarks, I said that Israel needs pressure. And without pressure, Israel is enjoying simply a culture of impunity, and it is profiting from the situation, because they are using our land, our water, our resources, our people, even cheap labor, and they have no cost. There is no cost associated with this, no consequences. And therefore, short of changing that equation, we will stay where we are. And our method of changing that equation is what I propagated, is what I argued. We need international pressure, serious pressure, and this is not just a Palestinian demand. This is an international obligation to impose sanctions and to associate cost. And we need to make sure that the region, the youth of the region, our brothers and sisters in the Arab world and in the Islamic world will help us. And we need to help the new generation of Palestine to continue this struggle. So it's not going to come automatically. It's not going to come because we are more convincing or we are just having a better argument. It's going to come when Israel realizes that the continuation of its expansion, the continuation of its colonization, the continuation of its occupation has a cost. And so far, unfortunately, it doesn't feel so.
Thank you, His Excellency. Now the next question is from Mariam Otmani from Morocco. She asks, what is the biggest challenge faced by the youth and women in Palestine?
It's the occupation, Mariam. It's the occupation, really. There are many other challenges, but the occupation is number 1 and 2 and 3 and maybe 10. Because, if you ever visit Palestine and you see the situation there, you will be surprised how much a military occupation intervenes in your life. I mean, you are not born until the occupation gives you a birth certificate. You are not dead unless the occupation gives you a death certificate. You cannot travel unless the occupation allows you to travel. And you know what? If you are young and want to go and pray in Jerusalem, in Al-Aqsa Mosque, most likely they will not give you a permit. If you are not too young and you want, most likely they will. If you are a man, you are deprived. If you are a woman and has a family member, it's an issue. So they control every single aspect, and let alone controlling the very material base on which youth should build their economy and their future, like the land, the use of land, the use of resources. So I must say the biggest obstacle is occupation, and that's why our youth is primarily focused on that, and that's why you have seen their uprising over the last few months to rid ourselves. Does this mean we don't have other challenges? No, we have many other challenges. We don't want just to end the occupation, but we want to establish a very special state, a state that respects the law, treats all of our citizens equally, protect our citizens, provide for our citizens, a state that can actually utilizes our human capital to the best, a state that could be a source of security and stability to the entire region, and a bridge, a true bridge between East and West. Remember, we have Bethlehem where Jesus was born, we have Jerusalem and Al-Aqsa Mosque where Islam and Rasul Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We have the father of all prophets, Ibrahim, buried in Hebron. We have such a heritage, even in the tourism sense. Our youth will find it really rewarding. Can you imagine if tourism is open, if the free state of Palestine welcomes you to Jerusalem and to Bethlehem and to all these areas? Can you imagine the millions of Muslim tourists who will come and pour into our country? So our economic situation, our political situation, our human rights situation are all linked to the illegality of the military occupation we are in right now.
Thank you, His Excellency. Now, the fourth question is from Bufasa Sadiq from Algeria. What should be done to tackle the misinformation spread by the Israelis in the media?
Thank you, Bufasa, and this is a very good question, I must say. But by being true, Bufasa, by being real and accurate, and we don't need to do what Israel does, misinformation and fake news. We have the real news. All what we need is to portray this news, to carry this news, to spread this news. You have tons of daily footages and images and situations in Palestine that needs to be distributed and disseminated worldwide, because we need to build this public opinion and expose the reality as it is. But this cannot be done just like that. We need to challenge the international media, the traditional media. We need to challenge them. In every interview I made in the last few months, I would immediately challenge the interviewer, and I would say that you are part of the problem. This is double standards. You have been covering up, you have been really disfiguring our struggle, portraying it in a very bad, inaccurate shape. So we need to do all that, and we need to also correct the terminology, not to accept whatever we are told. The two-sidism, as I explained, war. Militias. What militias? When they describe Palestinian people, the people who are demonstrating, Palestinian gunmen. So we are gunmen, but the Israeli occupation forces are defense forces. So we need to engage, Bufasa, my friend, my brother. We need to engage in full force to A, put out there the truth, and B, challenge anyone who wants to blind the international public opinion from the truth. And I tell you, these two tasks are achievable.
Thank you, His Excellency. Okay, I will continue with our last question, and it is coming from Mahdi Fayek from Afghanistan. Can the international community take effective steps to preserve the Islamic heritage in Palestine?
Thank you, Mahdi. The answer is yes, with capital letters, Mahdi. Yes, there is Islamic heritage in Palestine, and we are proud of it, very proud. There is Christian heritage in Palestine, and we are very proud of it. And we are very proud of our Christian brothers and sisters who are an integral part of who we are. Integral part of our struggle, and those parts are an important side of our heritage, our culture, our civilization, our identity. And therefore, not only we need you to come and help uh, 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 renovate these places, and we do a lot of that work, but to protect them. By coming and praying in Al-Aqsa Mosque, you protect them. By coming and praying in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, if you are Christian, you are also protecting, and you are helping the people who live there, helping the Palestinian shops in Jerusalem, the shopkeepers, etc. We need to make sure that we stop this onslaught on our sacred places. And we must respect all religions. We must respect people's holy places, be it Muslims, Christians, or Jews. So a mosque is a mosque. No one else is allowed to pray in a mosque except if they are Muslims. No one is allowed to pray in a church except if they are Christians, unless you are invited, and that's nice, you know. I used to take part in some of my Christian brothers and sisters ceremonies. And the same, Jews should pray in their synagogues. You know, there's a lot of confusion and mixing there, and the Israeli government, only recently, the new Prime Minister of Israel, Naftali Bennett, said that, you know, Muslims and Jews are allowed to pray in Al-Aqsa Mosque. Why should anybody pray in a mosque? I mean, except the Muslims. So this is a very important issue. It's a sensitive issue, and the best way to actually help us is by coming and praying and enjoying the beautiful scenes in Jerusalem and in Ramallah and in Hebron and in Gaza. And I know it's difficult, it's not easy, but also supporting the livelihoods and the people who are actually, maintaining our mosques. You know, our Aqsa Mosque would have been under threat without the strength of our heroes in Jerusalem. I'll tell you, we have lions in Jerusalem. Both men and women are lions there, protecting our sacred places, both Islamic and Christian. We have lions there roaring all the time, as you saw in the streets of Jerusalem only 2 months ago. So we will protect these places, but the best course of action is that you also, as Muslims, reaffirm your connection to the place, your connection to us, and your continued support.
Thank you, His Excellency. Well, that was our final question, and I can see that we really made you tired, but I can say that it was truly inspiring for me, and I'm sure it is the same for all participants. Well, finally, on behalf of ICYF, I would like to express my appreciation to you, His Excellency, and all the participants for taking your time among your busy duties to attend this session of the Diplomacy Academy. And I would like to close my remarks and officially announce the end of the 4th Diplomacy Academy, wishing the future prosperity and success of all of you and all the participants. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.